All right. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this morning, a longtime and very active member of our congregation, Patton White. He does also lead an interesting life outside of these walls. I don't know if you're aware, but he spends most of his free time as a deep sea diver. He has found several shipwrecks and uncovered long sought-after treasure from well-known pirates, including Blackbeard and Captain Kidd.
Wild imagination.
Yeah. I said, Pat, I don't have a bio for you. He said, make it up, make it wild and crazy. But honestly, Pat, your life does feel it was so stretched to make it extra wild and crazy because Patton is, as you all might know, actually been a performing artist and choreographer since 1985, and he's artistic and administrative director of Beacon Dance since 1990. He recently retired from a long career as a professor at Emory University, and as far as I can tell, actually does do a great job of living a good life, including traveling, eating good food, spending time with family, friends, and art. Please help me welcome Patton White.
The last thing I would ever do is deep sea dive. I have a complete fear of deep oceans. So, who in this room, by a show of hands, who, thinking back 10 years ago, who in this room would have expected me to be up here speaking about being a father? Raise your hands. Who would have expected that? Yeah. I certainly would have. But, as Bill pointed out too, I'm very happy to be doing this on this, for me, most favorite day of the year. The solstice, the longest day. I'm one of those people who loves the light. And so I'm very joyous about that. So, existentialism provides a framework for self-actualization and mental health. It asks you to step back, recognize the societal scripts you are following, and intentionally decide what a well-lived life looks like for you.
Yeah.
It empowers you to be the sole author of your life's narrative rather than relying on external authorities to assign you a purpose.
Yes.
Identity. We are born, and then we shape our identity or essence. We write our own script. Radical freedom. We are completely free to make our own choices, but with this freedom comes the ultimate responsibility for our actions and consequences. With these thoughts in mind, I'd like to start with some questions. When did I choose to become a father? How does one do that? What does it mean to be a father? What are the societal scripts? Just as we first exist and then we find our essence, is there fatherness that is based on first becoming one and then finding what that essence is? How has the reality of my unfolding experience resulted in an unending sequence of questions and concerns for both me and my offspring? Let me start at a beginning. I believe it was the summer of 1988 when I was at a party hosted by my college choir director that I found myself sitting next to a man who turned out to be the director of Zytex, a sperm bank. He shared that they were always looking for new donors and recruited me to become one. So just to be clear, my choices that led up to this moment, meaning at that party, choosing to attend Emory University, choosing to audition for the Emory Men's Glee Club, choosing to attend the party, and choosing to go have a seat next to Skip, that was his name. After about 6 months of donating, I made another choice, to stop, for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons was that I had the opportunity to go visit a friend from college who was living in Paris at that time for 6 weeks. Now, who would give up that? When I got back, I received a phone call from Zytex asking if I would come back to continue to donate. They shared that a birth mother had a successful pregnancy and birth and wanted to be able to have another with the same donor father. This was the first time that I beheld fatherhood. It seemed distant and more of an idea than a reality. I eventually was given a photo of this girl, and that made it slightly more real, but still an idea. I did go back and continued to donate for approximately 15 years in total. And during this time, I only knew of the one confirmed offspring, but I imagined that there must be more. About 10 years ago, I went to the Pride Marketplace during Atlanta Pride and was wandering booths when I came across one for Zytex. Mary, the person who replaced Skip as the director, was there, and she remembered me, and we chatted for a while, and she let me know that they had just launched a messaging portal through their website to connect donors with their offspring. She knew that I had indicated an interest in learning about my offspring while I was still donating. And so I subsequently signed up, and within 24 hours received my first message from one of the birth mothers. She lived in Toronto, Canada. Apparently I was very popular in Canada. And specifically to lesbian couples. And had 2 children, a girl and a boy, and shared that the girl had wanted to connect with me. We messaged back and forth for a couple of years, but at some point a glitch in the messaging portal led to a breakdown of the system, and subsequently my connection to them ceased. Then, in 2018, I received a message through Facebook out of the blue from another birth mother requesting contact. The invitation was to become a part of her 2 sons' lives to the extent that I was interested. I was faced with a new choice, and my first instinct was to proceed with caution, as I was unsure of whether or not it might be some sort of attempt to scam me in some way. As we all know, it's a scary world out there when it comes to the internet and all of that. So I chose not to respond. And about 6 months later, the message popped back up, because at the time, I even to this day don't really fully understand all of the workings of Facebook.
Amen to that.
And so about 6 months later, the message popped back up, and I chose to do a little more research. And I discovered that one of my best friends was a friend of this mother on Facebook. And so I reached out to my friend Kathy, and one thing led to another, resulting in the authentication of the first message, and that it was not a scam. My next choice remains one of the most memorable choices that I have made as a person. I chose to respond and to agree to explore where things could go. In the moment immediately after I pushed the send button for my email to Becky, the birth mother, I felt the most intense rush of pure, unadulterated joy that I believe I ever experienced. The joy was wrapped in the idea of possibility. While I had absolutely no idea as to where things might eventually go, it didn't matter to me. I imagine that it might be the same emotion that a newly expectant father might feel upon learning of a pregnancy and impending birth. Is that true, fathers? Since I didn't experience that myself. Raise your hand. Did you feel unadulterated joy, or was it terror? Becky and I began to converse via email and eventually agreed upon meeting in person. As the date drew near, I felt more and more nervous. Most fathers don't have to be concerned about whether or not their offspring will like them, as most fathers aren't experiencing their offspring for the first time as adolescents. What would they expect of me? What would they want me to be in their lives? My inner dramatic self imagined that when we first laid eyes on one another, we would run towards one another and fillet our arms around each other as they do in the movies. You know, one of those societal scripts that we're not supposed to be trying to follow as existentialists. The movie that, for me, and it's not about fathers and offspring, but that meeting, that long lost meeting, is from The Color Purple, when Celie's sister comes back into her life. And just that joy of connecting. But of course, this isn't quite what happened. We were all nervous. We were all playing it cool. We shook hands. We were in a frozen yogurt shop. We went to the dispensers and got frozen yogurt and sat, trying to play it cool. And we began the process of knowing one another. That was in April of 2019, the 13th of April, which for me, at least, has become an important milestone date. Then in June, a couple of months later, I received my first ever Happy Father's Day text message, an invitation from my son Anderson to meet up with him and his brother Jody again at our first meeting spot, Minchie's, the frozen yogurt shop, which I'm sad to say apparently no longer exists. They were choosing now as well. How does one become a father? What does the term encompass? What are the societal scripts often imposed upon a father? We certainly didn't choose our own father, and yet we must most certainly learn from them. In my case, I believe that much of my learning from my father was how I would want to do things differently. And I didn't really ever set out to be a father because I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about my choice to begin to donate. While Zytex indicated at some point that for those donors who would be interested in connecting with their offspring might eventually have that opportunity, it was still not going to be up to me, but rather the choice of any of my offspring. What might compel them? There's the potential medical reasons, health profiles that might be useful to know and be aware of, that sort of thing. But would they have feeling as if they were, but would they have been feeling as if they were missing something without my presence? I have more recently discovered that at least some of my offspring were not told they were donor conceived. Things get complicated without me even having to make choices, but rather learning of questionable choices by others. So what have been some of my choices in finding that essence of fatherhood? Unconditional love. This is at the forefront. I love my offspring simply because they exist. I will probably never even know all of them, but I will love them. Being there. I will be there and I will make every effort to provide whatever support, emotional and tangible, that may be needed by my offspring who have reached out to me. Nurturing their own essences. I will not try to impose my hopes or expectations on my offspring, but rather celebrate who they wish to be, who they wish to continually become. Sharing my own stories. Each of us has a myriad of stories of how we have become who we are in this moment. I will gladly share any of my many stories if any of my offspring are interested in hearing them. Marveling at their own potential parenthood. If and when any of my offspring become parents, I will look forward to seeing what choices they make, what questions they may have, what they discover feels right for them. I look forward to this continuing journey and to discovering the many essences of what a well-lived fatherhood looks like for me. I also look forward to learning more about recent research. I don't know if anyone was listening to NPR this morning, but there's a story in Washington Post, and they interviewed the writer about how the brain changes when one becomes a father. And so looking forward to learning more about the research that indicates changes occur in the brain as one becomes a father. How does the chemistry inside the brain and nervous system drive our actions? How does the notion of instinct shape this journey? Only time will tell. Thank you.
Thank you, Patton. That was beautiful.
Yes.